The great chamber of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Thousands of seats circled a central platform where speakers would stand, surrounded by the representatives of 100 different species. Some had scales, some had fur, some had no bodies at all and floated as clouds of light. All of them had one thing in common. They had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They considered themselves the masters of the galaxy, and today they were looking down at the humans. Ambassador Kim Yuna stood at the center platform with her hands folded behind her back. She was a small woman with gray hair pulled back tight. Her face showed nothing. Beside her stood Admiral Park J, a tall man with broad shoulders and calm eyes. Behind them waited 12 other members of the human delegation. They wore simple black uniforms. No medals, no decorations, just the symbol of Earth on their shoulders. High Chancellor Drovik of the Velen hegemony leaned forward in his elevated seat. He was a massive creature, 3 meters tall, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His species had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for 6,000 years. To him, humans were insects that had somehow learned to build spaceships. "You come here to negotiate for the Orion Corridor?" Drovik said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "A region your primitive sensors stumbled upon by accident. A region that belongs to this council by ancient law." Kim Yuna did not blink. "We discovered it. We mapped it. Under the recognition protocols of this council, we have the right to negotiate access." Laughter rippled through the chamber. "Not from everyone, but from enough." Drovik smiled. It was not a kind smile. "The recognition protocols," he repeated slowly. "Yes, those were written when we believed all spacefaring species deserved respect. Before we understood that some species are simply not ready." Admiral Park J's jaw tightened slightly, but he said nothing. "Humanity has been in space for 200 years, Drovik continued. 200 years. My people were building warships when your ancestors were drawing pictures on cave walls. The Antheons were mapping black holes when humans still thought the sun moved around their little planet." More laughter. Counselor Mira of the Antheon Collective did not laugh. She sat in her floating chair, her silver skin reflecting the chamber lights. Watching the humans was something that looked almost like sympathy. "Let us be honest," Drovik said. "This negotiation was never real. The council has already decided." He pressed a button on his chair. A holographic document appeared in the air above the chamber. It was written in the common galactic language, but translation systems made it readable to everyone. Kim Yuna read it. Her expression did not change, but Admiral Park J saw her fingers tighten behind her back.
"Yeah?"
"This is an ultimatum," she said quietly. "This is reality," Drovik replied. "Humanity will surrender all military vessels to council inspection. Your weapons research facilities will be dismantled. Your colonies will accept protectorate status under the Velen hegemony. You will be protected and guided until you are mature enough to participate in galactic affairs." The chamber was silent. In exchange, Drovik added, "As if offering a gift, we will not destroy you." Admiral Park J spoke for the first time. His voice was steady. "And if we refuse?" Drovik spread all 4 of his arms wide. "Then you will learn what happens to species who challenge their betters. There are empty worlds scattered across this galaxy, Admiral. Worlds that once held civilizations who thought they could stand against us. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "I understand perfectly," Park J said. "Then be wise." Drovik looked at Kim Yuna. "Convince your government to accept. You have 30 days to respond." The chamber waited. Some representatives looked uncomfortable. Others looked eager to see the humans humiliated. A few, like Counselor Mira, looked sad. Kim Yuna took a slow breath. Then she asked a simple question. "Is this the council's final word?" Drovik nodded. "It is all of you." Kim Yuna looked around the chamber. "Every species here agrees with this ultimatum." Silence. Some representatives looked away. Some nodded. Most did nothing at all, unwilling to challenge the Velen hegemony openly, but also unwilling to support them out loud. "I see, Kim," Yuna said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data tablet. For 197 years, humanity had recorded every negotiation, every insult, every broken promise, every time the council had pushed them aside or treated them as children, every time they had been told to wait, to be patient. To accept their place, Kim Yuna held the tablet up so everyone could see it. Then she pressed a single button. The screen went dark. "Earth has received your terms," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire chamber. "We reject them." She turned and nodded to Admiral Park Jae. Without a word, the Admiral turned toward the exit. The 12 delegates behind them turned as well. In perfect unison, like soldiers on a parade ground, the entire human delegation began to walk away. Dravik's smile disappeared. "You cannot walk out of this council." Kim Yuna did not stop. She did not turn around. She simply said, "We just did. This is an insult to every species here." Drovik roared. Now Kim Yuna did stop. She turned her head just enough to look back over her shoulder. "No, High Chancellor. What happened here today was an insult. We simply chose not to accept it." And she kept walking. The great doors of the chamber swung open. The human delegation passed through them, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. For a long moment, no one spoke. In 10,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever walked out of the council. Wars had been declared in this chamber. Treaties had been signed. Civilizations had risen and fallen based on decisions made in these seats, but no one had ever simply refused to participate. No one had ever looked at the collected power of the galaxy and said no. Counselor Mira was the first to speak. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "What have we done?" Drovik heard her. He turned his massive head toward her, his eyes filled with anger. "We have given them a lesson," he said, "and soon we will give them another." But even as he said it, something cold settled in his chest. Something he had not felt in a very long time. It was doubt. Far above the station, the human transport ship broke away from the docking ring and turned toward Earth. Ambassador Kim Yuna stood at the observation window. Watching the stars, Admiral Park Jae joined her. "They will come for us now," he said. "Yes. Are we ready?" Kim Yuna turned to look at him. For the first time since they had arrived, she allowed herself a small smile. "We have been ready for 200 years, Admiral. We were just waiting for them to make the first move." The ship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying its passengers home. Behind them, the galaxy held its breath. The news reached Earth before the delegation did. By the time Ambassador Kim Yuna's ship entered the solar system, every human colony from Mars to the outer stations had already seen the footage. Someone on the council station had recorded the walkout and leaked it to the galactic networks. Within hours, it had spread everywhere, in the Seoul megaplex. Capital of the United Earth government, people gathered in the streets to watch the video on massive public screens. They saw their ambassador stand alone in that enormous chamber. They saw the alien High Chancellor mock their entire species. They heard him threaten to destroy them, and they saw Kim Yuna turn her back and walk away. The crowds did not cheer. They did not celebrate. Instead, something quieter happened. Something more dangerous? They stood in silence, and in that silence, a decision was being made. Not by the government. Not by the military. By the people themselves, they would not bow. President Lee Tae watched the footage in his office at the top of the government tower. He was 63 years old, a former soldier who had fought in the last of the Earth unification wars. His hair was white now, and his face carried the lines of difficult decisions. But his eyes were still sharp. General Choi Hannah stood beside him. She was younger, maybe 40, with short black hair and a reputation as one of the finest military minds Earth had ever produced. She had spent her entire career preparing for a war that everyone told her would never come. "The Council's ultimatum gives us 30 days, she said. "But our intelligence suggests the Velen hegemony was planning to invade regardless of our answer. They had been moving ships to the border for months." President Lee Tae nodded slowly. So the negotiation was never real. It was theater. They wanted to humiliate us first, make an example of us for the rest of the galaxy. If we had accepted their terms, General Choi Hanna's expression hardened. Then we would have been disarmed when their fleet arrived. Our colonies would have been occupied. Our people would have become slaves in everything but name. The president turned away from the screen. Through his window, he could see the city stretching out below. 20 million people lived in the Sol megaplex alone. Billions more across Earth and its colonies. All of them were waiting to see what their government would do. "Call the assembly," he said. "Full session. Tonight." The assembly chamber was already crowded when President Lite arrived. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every station had come. Some had traveled for hours to be there in person. The room hummed with tension and anger and fear. But mostly anger, President Lite took his place at the central podium. He did not use notes. He did not need them. 3 hours ago, he began, our delegation was given an ultimatum by the Galactic Council. We were told to surrender our ships, dismantle our defenses, accept the rule of an alien empire that has never treated us as anything but children. He paused. I will not read you the full document. You have all seen it. I will only tell you this. For 200 years, we have done everything they asked. We followed their rules. We accepted their restrictions. We waited for them to see us as equals. His voice grew harder. They never will. The chamber was silent. High Chancellor Dravik told our ambassador that humans were still screaming in their cradle. He said we were not ready to participate in galactic affairs. He threatened to erase us from history if we did not submit. President Lite looked around the room. I have a different view. He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared behind him. It showed the Velen border and the ships that had been quietly gathering there. General Choi Hanna has confirmed what many of us suspected. The hegemony was preparing to attack us, no matter what we said. This ultimatum was not diplomacy. It was a death sentence wrapped in polite words. They expected us to sign it. They expected us to be too afraid to resist. He turned back to the assembly. I ask you now, representatives of humanity, are we afraid? The answer came as a roar. Every person in the chamber rose to their feet. The sound shook the walls. President Lite raised his hand, and slowly the noise faded.
Ow.
Then let us make our answer official. I call for a vote. All those in favor of rejecting the Council's ultimatum and defending our right to exist, stand now. Every representative remained standing. There was no opposition. No abstentions. For the first time in the history of the United Earth government, the assembly was completely united. The vote is recorded, President Lite said. Now there is one more thing we must do. He turned to a communications officer standing at the side of the room. Open a channel to the Galactic Council. All frequencies. I want every species in the galaxy to hear this. The officer's hands moved across his console. Channel open, sir. President Lite faced the camera that would broadcast his words across the stars. He took a breath, and then he spoke. To the Galactic Council. To High Chancellor Dravik of the Velen hegemony. To every species watching this transmission. My name is Lite. I am the President of the United Earth's government, and I speak for all of humanity. He straightened his shoulders. 3 hours ago, you gave us an ultimatum. You demanded our surrender. You threatened our destruction. You called us children who needed to be taught our place. His voice grew cold. We have considered your terms. We reject them. Completely. Permanently. We will not surrender our ships. We will not dismantle our defenses. We will not accept the rule of any empire, council, or power that treats us as less than equal. He leaned forward slightly. You wanted to make an example of us? You wanted to show the galaxy what happens to species who challenge the old order. Very well, we will be an example, but not the one you intended. Now his voice rose, filling the chamber and echoing across light years of space. As of this moment, a state of war exists between the United Earth government and the Velen hegemony. We did not seek this conflict. We asked only for fairness. You answered with threats. Now you will see how humanity responds to those who try to destroy us. He paused one final time. To the Velen hegemony specifically. You have 30 days of our time. That is how long you gave us to surrender. We give you the same to withdraw your forces from our borders. After that, we will come for you, and we will not stop until this war is won. He looked directly into the camera. You called us infants. You will learn that even infants grow up, and when they do, they remember who tried to kill them in the cradle. The transmission ended across the galaxy. In council chambers and military headquarters and ordinary homes, countless beings watched in stunned silence. The infant species had not surrendered. They had not begged. They had declared war on one of the three most powerful empires in known space. In his private chamber on the Velen homeworld, Chancellor Drovik watched the recording 3 times. Then he began to laugh. A deep, rumbling sound that echoed off the walls. "Brave little creatures," he said to his aide. "Stupid, but brave." He stood and walked to his window. Outside, the Velen shipyard stretched to the horizon, building the weapons that would soon crush humanity forever. "Send word to Fleetmaster Gorthak," Drovik ordered. "I want the humans destroyed within a month. Burn their colonies. Break their fleet. Leave their homeworld intact so they can watch their species die slowly." The aide bowed and hurried away. Drovik smiled at the stars. He did not know that far away. In a secret facility buried deep beneath Earth's surface, Dr. Beek-Soong was running final tests on weapons the galaxy had never seen. He did not know that humanity's fleet was not the small defensive force his spies had reported. He did not know that for 200 years. While humans smiled and nodded and accepted every insult, they had been preparing for exactly this moment. He would learn soon enough. Fleet. Gorthak stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Dominion of Stars, and watched his fleet arrive at the Kethfor system. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Each one was massive, bristling with weapons that had crushed rebellions across a dozen star systems. Together, they represented more firepower than most species would see in their entire history. Against them, according to his intelligence reports, the humans had placed 40 ships. Gorthak allowed himself a small smile. This would not even be a battle. It would be an execution. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Find the human fleet." His sensor officer worked for a moment. Then he looked up with a confused expression. "Fleetmaster, I have located the human vessels. 42 ships, holding position near the 3rd planet." "Good. Set course to intercept. We will destroy them and then proceed to the next system." "There is something else, Fleetmaster." Adok turned. "What?" The sensor officer hesitated. "The human ships. They are not moving. They are not attempting to flee or spread out. They are simply waiting. Perhaps they wish to surrender. But their weapons are powered, and there is something strange about their formation. I have never seen anything like it." Gorthak frowned and walked to the main display. The holographic image showed the human fleet clearly. 42 small vessels arranged in a complex pattern, like a net stretched across space. They looked fragile compared to his battleships. Almost pitiful. But they were not running. Somewhere deep in Gorthak's mind, a warning whispered. His species had survived for thousands of years by listening to such warnings. But his orders were clear. High Chancellor Drovik wanted the humans destroyed quickly. An example had to be made. All ships, Gorthak commanded. Attack formation. Destroy the human fleet. 300 Velen warships surged forward. On the bridge of the Earth destroyer Indomitable, Captain Owu watched the enemy approach. He was a thin man with gray at his temples and steady hands. He had served in Earth's Navy for 30 years, always knowing this day would come. "Enemy fleet closing," reported Lieutenant Essie Nari from the tactical station. She was young, barely 30, but her mind worked faster than the ship's computers. She had designed the formation they were using. She had run the simulations 10,000 times. "Distance?" Captain Owu asked. 800,000 kilometers in closing. "They will be in their optimal weapons range in 4 minutes." Owu nodded slowly. "And our range?" Sionari smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "They are already in our range, Captain." The captain opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is indomitable. Execute pattern dawn on my mark." 42 ships responded with confirmation signals. Owu looked at the enemy fleet one more time. 300 warships. Thousands of years of military tradition. The pride of the Velen hegemony. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. The human ships did not fire conventional weapons. Instead, they launched something new. Something Earth had been building in secret for 50 years. Dr. Beek Sung had called them quantum disruption warheads. The military simply called them sunbreakers. Each warhead was small, no bigger than a person. But when they detonated, they did something impossible. They reached into the fabric of space itself and twisted it. And anything nearby that relied on nuclear fusion to power its systems, like the reactors on Velen warships, suddenly found those reactions becoming unstable, very unstable. The first wave of sunbreakers hit the front line of the Velen fleet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the great warships began to glow. Their reactors, pushed past any safe limit by the quantum distortion, went critical. 20 ships exploded in the first 10 seconds. Gorthok stared at the display in disbelief. "What is happening?" report. "Reactor failures across the fleet." His officer shouted. "The human weapons are somehow destabilizing our power cores." "That is impossible." "Fleetmaster, we have lost 47 ships." 53. The count is still rising. Gorthak gripped the railing of his command platform. Around him, his bridge crew was screaming, trying to make sense of the disaster unfolding before them. On the display, his beautiful fleet was dying. All ships spread formation. He ordered, "Get distance from each other. Do not let their weapons catch multiple targets." But it was too late. The human fleet was moving now, sweeping through the chaos with perfect coordination. Lieutenant Sio Nari had spent years studying Velen tactics. She knew exactly how they would respond to surprise. She had planned for every possible reaction. The Velen ships that tried to spread out flew directly into the second wave of sunbreakers. The ships that tried to retreat found human destroyers cutting off their escape routes. The ships that tried to fight back discovered that their weapons could not lock onto targets that moved the way human ships moved. Earth's vessels were smaller, faster, and piloted by crews who had trained for this exact battle. Captain Oh Wu stood calmly on his bridge as the Indomitable swept past a burning Velen cruiser. Status report. Enemy fleet down to 130 vessels. Sionari reported. They are beginning to break formation. I believe they are preparing to retreat. Do not let them. All ships continue attack. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, 187 Velen warships had been destroyed. The rest fled into faster-than-light travel, scattering in every direction. Their proud formation shattered. The human fleet had lost 4 ships. 12 more were damaged. But 42 vessels had faced 301. Captain Oh Wu opened a channel to the retreating Velen ships. He knew they would receive the message eventually. This is Captain Oh Wu of the Earth Destroyer Indomitable. Tell your High Chancellor that Kethfor belongs to humanity now. Tell him his fleet died here. And tell him this was us being gentle. Next time, we will not be so kind. Close the channel. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than light itself. The great Velen hegemony, unconquered for 6,000 years, had been broken by the infant species. The aliens who had mocked humanity at the Council, who had laughed at their short history and primitive technology, now stared at battle reports that made no sense. How could 40 ships destroy 300? How could a species only 2 centuries old build weapons that the ancient empires had never imagined? How could the humans have hidden this strength for so long? High Chancellor Drovik received the report in his private chamber. He read it once. Then again. Then he threw the data tablet across the room and screamed with rage.
Impossible.
This is impossible. But the reports kept coming. From Kethfor, from the border systems. From every place where Velen forces encountered the human fleet, each report was the same. Overwhelming human victory. Velen forces in retreat. In 3 weeks, the war that was supposed to end in a month had turned into a disaster. And on Earth, President Lite addressed his people again. Today, at the Battle of Kethfor, our forces achieved a great victory. But this is not the end. It is only the beginning. The Velen hegemony will send more ships. They will try again. We must be ready. He paused. For 200 years we prepared for this war. We built in secret. We trained in silence. We let them think we were weak. Now the galaxy knows the truth. Humanity is not weak. Humanity was waiting. He raised his fist. And now humanity is fighting. We will not stop until our right to exist is recognized. We will not rest until we are free. And we will never, ever kneel. The cheers that followed could be heard around the world, far away. In her floating chamber on the Anthean homeworld, Counselor Mira watched the human broadcast with something like wonder. They were never infants, she whispered to herself. We just could not see what they really were. She made a decision then. A decision that would change her life and the future of her people. She reached for her communication device and began to compose a message. It was addressed to Earth. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so loud. Representatives screamed at each other across the vast space. Accusations flew like weapons. Alliances that had stood for centuries crumbled in minutes. High Chancellor Drovik stood at the center of the chaos, his 4 arms spread wide, demanding silence. The treaties are clear. He roared. When one member of this council is attacked, all members must respond. I demand that every fleet join us against the humans. Counselor Phoenix of the Solari Federation remained seated. His species looked almost human, with pale blue skin and silver eyes, but they had none of humanity's fire. They were calculators, traitors, survivors. They had lasted 10,000 years by always choosing the winning side. The treaties require mutual defense, Phoenix said calmly. But you were not attacked, High Chancellor. You attacked the humans. You gave them an ultimatum. You sent your fleet to destroy them. This is not defense. This is a war of your own making. They declared war on us. After you threatened to enslave them, I have read the transcript of that council session. Phoenix shook his head slowly. You pushed too hard, Drovik. You wanted to make an example. Now, you are the example. Drovik's blue-gray skin darkened with rage. You would abandon our alliance? I would choose not to die for your pride, Chamber erupted again. Some representatives supported Drovik. Others openly mocked him. Still others sat in terrified silence. Watching the only stable order they had ever known fall apart, Counselor Mira rose from her seat. The Antheon Collective had been members of this council for 8,000 years. They had always followed the rules, always kept the peace, always done what was expected. Until now. The Antheon Collective withdraws from this council, she announced. The chamber went silent. Furthermore, Mira continued, we have sent a diplomatic message to the United Earth's government offering a non-aggression pact. We will not fight against humanity. We will not support this war. Drovik stared at her. You betray us. After 8,000 years, you betray us for these animals. No, High Chancellor. We simply refuse to repeat your mistake. We watched you humiliate them. We said nothing. We watched you threaten them. We said nothing. We were cowards. She straightened her silver shoulders. We will not be cowards anymore. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her delegation followed. Before she reached the doors, she stopped and looked back at the chamber one last time. The humans have a saying I recently learned. Those who make peaceful change impossible make violent change inevitable. You made this war, Drovik. All of you. Remember that when it comes to your worlds. The doors closed behind her, far from the council, in the darkness of Velen's space. Commander Yunbin led his team through the shadows. He was not a man who appeared in official records. His unit did not exist according to any government database. But for 30 years, He and his team had been doing the work that no one else could do. Gathering intelligence, sabotaging enemies, preparing for the war that everyone said would never come, now that war was here. And Yun Bin finally had permission to do what he did best, the Velen primary. Shipyard orbited a dying star on the edge of their empire. It was massive, a structure larger than some moons, where the hegemony built the warships that had conquered a quarter of the galaxy. Heavy shields protected it. Thousands of soldiers guarded it. It was considered completely secure. Yun Bin and his team had been inside for 3 days. They moved through maintenance tunnels and forgotten corridors, planting charges at critical points. The Velen guards never saw them. The security systems never detected them. Earth had spent 200 years studying how alien species thought, how they built, how they defended themselves. They knew every weakness. On the third night, Yun Bin reached the central reactor control room. He placed the final charge with careful hands, then stepped back. All teams report. 8. 12 voices responded. All charges placed. All positions secure. Extraction in 5 minutes. Set timers. They left the way they came, like ghosts passing through walls. When the charges detonated, they were already aboard their hidden ship, flying away at maximum speed. Behind them, the shipyard began to die. Explosions rippled through its structure. Reactors went critical. Shields failed. Within an hour, the largest military construction facility in Velan, space was nothing but burning debris, falling into the dying star below. High Chancellor. Dravik received the news while arguing with the remaining council members. He stopped mid-sentence. His face went pale. How? He whispered. How did they get inside? No one had an answer. The destruction of the shipyard was a turning point, not just militarily but politically. Species that had been conquered by the Velen hegemony centuries ago began to stir. They saw the great empire bleeding. They saw its enemies winning. They remembered their own grievances. Rebellions began on a dozen worlds, small at first, then larger. Empress Valeth of the Kryn Empire watched it all from her throne room. The Kryn were the second of the 3 great powers, ancient rivals of the Velen. They had fought wars against each other that lasted centuries. They had killed billions on both sides. But they had never managed to truly hurt each other. Not like this. The Empress was old even by Kryn standards. Her scaled skin faded to pale gold, her eyes still sharp. She had ruled for 200 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. And she recognized something special in what humanity was doing. She dictated a message to President Li Te, to the leader of the human species. I am Empress Valeth of the Kryn Empire. I write not to offer alliance or friendship. The Kryn do not make such offers lightly. I write only to say this. We have what? Ched your kind since you first reached the stars. We thought you were soft, weak, a species that would fade away like so many others. We were wrong. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. You have done what the Kryn could not do in 6,000 years. You have made the Velen hegemony afraid. You have broken their fleet. You have burned their shipyards. You have started rebellions that will take them generations to suppress. And you have done it in 2 months. Her ancient eyes gleamed. The Kryn do not interfere in other species' wars. This is our law, but we remember. We remember those who humble the arrogant. When this war is over, the human species will find that the Kryn have long memories and longer gratitude. I look forward to seeing what you become. The message was sent. On Earth, President Li Te read it with General Choi Hana standing beside him. What do you think? He asked. The general considered. She is telling us that the Kryn will not help the Velen. That alone is worth 100 victories and the rest. She is curious about us. The Kryn respects strength above all else. We have shown strength. General Choi Hana smiled slightly. I think the Empress wants to see how strong we really are. President Li Te nodded. Then let us show her. He turned to the strategic display that showed the current state of the war. Earth's forces had pushed deep into Velen territory. The enemy fleet, once 3,000 ships strong, had been cut in half. Their allies were abandoning them. Their subject species were rebelling. The war was not over. But for the first time, victory seemed possible. General President Li Te said, "Begin planning the final offensive. I want the Velen homeworld under siege within 3 months." Oyi Hannah saluted. "Yes, sir." As she left, President Li Te looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there, High Chancellor Drovik was watching his empire crumble. Somewhere out there, species that had mocked humanity were now wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. And somewhere out there, Commander Yoon Bin was already planning his next mission. The war was entering its final phase, 6 months after the war began. High Chancellor Drovik stood in chains before the people who had once served him. The Velen homeworld had not been destroyed. President Li Te had given specific orders about that. When Earth's fleet arrived in orbit, they did not rain fire on the cities below. They did not slaughter civilians. They simply waited, blocking all escape routes. While the Velen government collapsed from within, Drovik's own generals removed him from power. They dragged him from his throne room and offered him to the humans as a gift, hoping it would save their people. It did. The surrender terms were harsh but fair. The Velen hegemony would release all conquered species. Their military would be reduced to defensive forces only. Their leaders would face trial for war crimes. In exchange, their homeworld would be left intact, and their people would be allowed to rebuild. Some on Earth wanted more. They wanted revenge for centuries of insults, for the threat of annihilation. For every time the Council had treated humanity as less than equal, but President Li Te refused. "We did not fight this war to become what they were," he told the Assembly. "We fought it to prove what we are." The great chamber on Valora Prime, where everything had begun, was rebuilt for the peace ceremony, but it looked different now. The elevated seats where the old council members had sat above everyone else were gone. In their place was a single round table, where all representatives sat at the same level. Ambassador Kim. Yuna returned to that chamber for the first time since she had walked out 6 months ago. She looked around at the faces gathered there. Some were old enemies. Some were new allies. All of them were watching her with expressions that ranged from respect to fear to hope. Counselor. Mira of the Anthean Collective sat across from her. The Antheans had been the first to break from the old council, the first to offer friendship to humanity. Their courage had inspired others. Counselor Phoenix of the Solari Federation was there too, his silver eyes calculating as always. The Solari had not helped Earth directly, but they had not opposed them either. Now, they were eager to establish trade relationships with the species that had rewritten the rules of galactic power. Representatives from a dozen newly freed worlds filled other seats. Species that had been conquered generations ago, who had thought they would live under Velen rule forever, now sat as equals for the first time in their history. Admiral Park Jae stood behind Ambassador Kim Yuna, just as he had 6 months ago. But this time, he was smiling. President Li Te entered the chamber last. He did not sit in a throne or stand on a platform. He simply took his place at the table like everyone else. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know that many of you are uncertain about what happens next. The old order is gone. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council was ruled by the ancient species, the great powers, the ones who had been in space the longest. They told everyone else what to do, and everyone else obeyed." He looked around the table. "That is over. Humanity did not fight this war to replace one empire with another. We did not shed blood so that we could sit in Drovik's chair and give orders to the galaxy. We fought because we were given no choice. We won because we refused to accept a universe where strength was measured by age instead of character." He stood and walked slowly around the table. "Today we offer something new. Not a council where the powerful rule the weak. Not an empire where one species commands all others. Instead, we offer a compact, a promise. Every species here will be equal. Every voice will be heard. Every world will be free to choose its own path." She stopped beside Counselor Mira. The Antheans showed courage when no one else would. They left the old council when leaving meant standing alone. He placed a hand on the back of her chair. They reminded us that doing the right thing is more important than doing the safe thing. Mira's silver skin flushed slightly, but she held her head high. President Lite moved on, passing each representative in turn. The species freed from Velen rule have suffered for generations. Their pain is not forgotten. Their future will be their own. He passed Counselor Phoenix. Even those who stood aside and watched may join us, if they are willing to build rather than simply profit. Phoenix shifted in his seat but said nothing. Finally, President Lite returned to his own place. I will not pretend that this will be easy. Old hatreds do not disappear in a day. Trust must be earned. Peace must be protected. But I believe that every species here is capable of something better than what came before. He looked directly at the recording devices that would broadcast his words across the galaxy. Humanity looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. We found that we were not. We found that the universe was old and crowded and often cruel. We were told that we did not belong, that we were too young, too primitive, too weak. His voice strengthened. We proved them wrong, not through cruelty or conquest, but by refusing to accept a fate that others chose for us. We fought when we had to. We offered mercy when we could. And now we offer something we were never given. A chance. A place at the table. A voice in what comes next. He spread his hands. This is the offer humanity makes to the galaxy. Take our hand and we build something together. Something worthy of the stars we share. Something that protects the weak and respects the strong and remembers that every species, no matter how young, has something to contribute. He paused. Refuse, and we will still build. We will find allies among those who share our vision. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. And we will never stop reaching for something better. He sat down. The choice is yours. For a long moment, no one spoke. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of translation systems working. Then Counselor Mira stood. Her voice was quiet but clear. 6 months ago, I watched humanity walk out of this chamber. I thought then that we had witnessed the beginning of a tragedy, the destruction of a young species who did not know their place. She looked at Kim Yuna. What we witnessed was a transformation, not just of humanity, but of ourselves. She placed her hand flat on the table. The Anthean Collective accepts the compact. We stand with humanity. One by one, other representatives rose. Other hands touched the table. The freed species joined first, eager to embrace any alternative to their former masters. Then the neutral worlds, who had watched from the sidelines and now saw which way the wind was blowing. Even Counselor Phoenix, after a moment of calculation, added his hand. The Solari were nothing, if not practical. Within an hour, it was done. The new Galactic Compact was formed, and humanity stood at its center. Later that night, Admiral Park J stood on the observation deck of his flagship. The ship had been through a dozen battles in 6 months. Its hull was scarred. Its crew was tired. But they had one. Lieutenant Essio Nari joined him at the viewport. She looked different than she had at the start of the war. Older, harder, but her eyes were still bright. The fleet is in formation, she reported. All ships ready to jump on your command. Park J nodded, watching the stars. Outside the viewport, ships from a dozen different species held positioned alongside Earth's vessels. Former enemies. New allies. The begin. Ing of something that had never existed before. Do you think it will last, Admiral? Sionati asked Top Park J considered the question. He thought about everything that had happened. The insults in the council chamber. The declaration of war. The battles. The losses. The victories. The moment when Drovik stood in chains, finally understanding that he had lost everything. Humans have a saying, Lieutenant, he finally replied. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And which are you doing, sir? Park J smiled slightly. Both we always have. It is what makes us human. He turned to face her fully. The galaxy has changed. We changed it. But change is never permanent. There will be new threats, new enemies, new challenges we cannot even imagine yet. The peace we built today will be tested tomorrow. He looked back at the stars, but we will meet those tests the same way we met this one, together with courage. With the refusal to kneel to anyone who tells us we do not belong. Then I suppose we should get started. Yes, Admiral Park J straightened his uniform. We should. He activated the fleet communication system. His voice reached every ship in formation, human and alien alike. All ships, this is Admiral Park J. The war is over. The compact is formed. Our work has just begun. Set course for Earth. We are going home. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, disappearing into the stars. Behind them, the galaxy began to heal. Ahead of them, a future they had fought to create was waiting. And somewhere in that future, new stories were already beginning. Stories of exploration and discovery. Stories of conflict and resolution. Stories of humanity reaching further into the dark, always pushing forward. Always refusing to accept limits that others tried to set 200 years ago. They had been children screaming in a cradle. They were something else entirely. They were humanity, and they were just getting started.